Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing visa agent horror stories. And I'm not going to tell people, what to do. You can use whatever service provider you feel like using. But I have had a lot of people, not a lot, but every now and then somebody will ask me, and just recently somebody did when I was having a discussion on the phone. They basically said, well, what's the difference between what you do and what a visa agent does? And quite honestly, the difference is profound in many ways. And to kind of go back here a moment, not to give too big of a history lesson here, but visa agents, I think, kind of came about in the breach. And they kind of came about at a very different time with respect to immigration, both in Thailand and in the US and globally. And what I mean to say is, there was a time, and frankly, there's a big piece of me, notwithstanding the fact I do immigration work, that would kind of prefer to go back to this time. There was a time when immigration was viewed as a purely administrative matter. You have foreigners in your country, you need to keep track of them, you go ahead and do that, you issue them a visa, and they need to renew it, but if something happens, we're not going to fly too off the handle about things like a minor overstay. And the other thing is, it was not viewed as an adjudication or as a matter that's that's sort of a law enforcement kind of paradigm. The reason I bring this up is that era is over. Fundamentally, it's just at an end. Immigration matters are very much an adjudication. Here in Thailand especially, I've seen it, anybody that's been an expat here has watched the paradigm shift from immigration as administrative bookkeeping, sort of administrative record keeping, to immigration as law enforcement. We saw this very dramatically with the rise of Big Joke in the immigration apparatus and the crackdowns associated with people on overstay and the crackdowns of people on education visas and so-called volunteer visas and things. And we saw a massive, massive crackdown of this. And in the aftermath of that, immigration in Thailand is very much it's a species of law enforcement. Yeah, and in the broader context, just across the board, U.S. immigration, for example, you don't want to go anywhere near a so-called visa agent. I mean, U.S. immigration is hard enough, and they've made it so obtuse now that, even, frankly, American attorneys like myself, who've had years of experience, they're just throwing up roadblocks and obstacles for no real reason, candidly. I've had cases here recently where I'm sitting there thinking, why are they doing this? There's no reason to do this. But here we are. You could point at the last administration, but we're getting to be on to 2 years into this administration. We haven't seen very much change. Hopefully that'll change in the American immigration context sooner rather than later. With respect to horror stories, especially during COVID, I had like a half a dozen folks that contacted us that wound up in overstay, didn't have their passports because they handed it off to a visa agent who said they could work miracles or get something done, and they didn't. And they just disappeared in some cases. In other cases, there were unscrupulous, quite frankly, illegal, quote-unquote, visa agents who were engaging in fraudulent activity, or they were engaging in illicit activity that resulted in folks having visas that were essentially either later determined to be illegitimate, or they were determined that they were completely fraudulent and they were determined to be an overstay. So, and then on top of this, there's nothing worse than handing your passport off to somebody and you never hear from them again. So now you got to deal with your own embassy to get a passport back before you can even deal with the problems of your visa. We saw a lot of this. So when people ask me, what's the difference between you and a visa agent? Well, the difference between me and a visa agent is we're a law firm. I'm an attorney. The other folks here in the firm that handle client cases, they're attorneys. Yes, we have folks, paralegals and assistant staff, clerks, etc., that also assist in these cases. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with legal professionals. You're not dealing with somebody who just, when everything goes wrong, they just turn off their phone and you never hear from them again.